Hello everybody, welcome back to Read and Reread. My name is Angelia and today it is Friday Reads on June the 16th. Yes, 16th. I'm 98% sure it's June 16th. How was your week? I hope you've been having a good one. My week's been pretty good. I have a lot of little things to talk about before we get into the book, so I'm going to jump right in. First of all, it was a pretty eventful week in the bookish world. The happiest and most exciting piece of that news was Barbara Kingsolver winning the Women's Prize for Fiction for okay, sorry Barbara, Demon Copperhead. And I was very excited about this win. I think I said, I don't know if I said it on the channel or if I said it somewhere in somebody's comment earlier, that I'd be happy with someone else winning just to spread out the prize joy, but I feel like she's very deserving of this prize as well. So congratulations to Barbara Kingsolver. If you haven't yet read Demon Copperhead, I do strongly recommend it. Do recommend a book pairing with David Copperfield. I read David Copperfield after, but I think that there would be some merit to also reading it before. I think if you read it before, you've got a better sense of the source material and how it influenced her crafting of Demon Copperhead. But I read it after, and so I didn't know at all what was going to happen when I was reading Demon Copperhead. If you read David Copperfield first, when you read Demon Copperhead, you will be aware of how a lot of the plot lines and characters have paralleled, and it might give some things away that are going to happen in the plot. So I think both experiences are worthy, but I do think they go together. I'm experimenting with a different camera angle here, like a tripod setup. I just get bored and want to move to different parts of the room. It's way too hot to go outside. I think it's already in the 90s out there, and I don't even know, it's not even 10 o'clock in the morning, but you know, I gotta entertain myself. So if this camera angle is super weird, you can let me know. Another piece of news this week was Cormac McCarthy passing away at the age of 89. We have most of his books here in our little home library because Stephen is a giant fan. His favorite novel is Blood Meridian, and I myself am not a giant fan. His writing style is a little too intensely brutal and bloody for me, but I do recognize the significance of his work in American literature. My favorite Cormac McCarthy, well, I've only read two. One of them was All the Pretty Horses, which I didn't love it. And then I read The Road, which I really do love. I should have used this when I did that tag and they asked about plain covers, because this is a wonderful example of a completely stark cover that completely and totally matches the atmosphere of the book. It's a post-apocalyptic tale like no other. It is the most bleak and depressing book I think I've ever read, but I really loved it. I'm never going to reread it. It was almost too much. It was at the very boundaries of what I can stand as a reader, but it was really, really good. Cormac McCarthy left us a legacy of scary things that I don't want to read, but that some people really, really cherish. This is just kind of a dorky thing I was going to show you. This is the summer reading for adults at my public library. It's in the form of Bookopoly, and you probably can't really see this, but all around the board there's the little neighborhoods like on a Monopoly set, and they're color coded, and whenever you read things in the three categories, then you get where's the little bookmark? It's the teeniest little bookmark, but you get these little, what's going on? You get these little beads added on, and there's a charm, I think, too, at some point. So I'm geeking out on filling in my summer reading. All right, shows. What have we been watching? We've been watching two shows. One, I took a recommendation from Michael from Comments last week, and we started watching Catastrophe. It is a comedy show, kind of a dark comedy, written and acted by Rob Delaney and Sharon Horgan, who I recently enjoyed in Bad Sisters. And they play a couple also named Rob and Sharon. but a fictional couple. Rob goes on a business trip to London, and during the week he's there, he meets Sharon at a bar, and they just have kind of a fun week, and they hook up about a million times. He goes home, and then she calls him a month later and says that she's pregnant. He decides to move to London and find a job there, and well, at first he has his old job, but that's another story. But they decide to try to make a go of it, and they're going to have this baby. And so it is about starting a life of being thrust right into a relationship and pregnancy and all that entails with somebody that you barely know. And Sharon's, all her family is completely bonkers, and it's really funny. It's very vulgar and profane, and the humor, it gets pretty dark, but we like stuff like that. So when you bring up, you know, when you go to a show and they kind of stick it with other shows that they think you'd like, it's sitting right next to Fleabag, if that gives you any indication. And it's not really like Fleabag because it doesn't have like the fourth wall and all that super self-conscious stuff, but it kind of dirty like that. So, but we're having fun with that show. And then also, okay, so then we're trying to watch a show that we tried it before, and we're struggling, and I could use any insights that anybody has, but we're trying to watch Dark, which is a German science fiction show, and we tried to watch this in 2020, but we got a few episodes in, and we couldn't remember why we stopped, because it always has like 95, 98 or whatever when you look it up on Rotten Tomatoes. So I thought, well, maybe, 2020, sometimes the judgment was off that in that spring and summer. Like things just didn't hit right. So maybe we should give it another chance. But it's kind of a struggle again. There's certain things about it that are very tropey. I'm intrigued by the time travel concept, because I got to think about time travel stories, but it's hard to engage with the characters, and it's got all this, I've seen a bunch of shows where there's a little town somewhere in Germany or France or somewhere European, and there's a little town and there's a forest, and the forest is mysterious and creepy and bizarre, somewhat supernatural things happen in there, and the cops are distracted by their messy personal lives, and birds fall dead out of the sky. That's been in about 4 different shows that I've seen. So I need a lifeline here. I'm calling a friend. If anybody has watched Dark, and should we keep going? I read an article about it last night that motivated me a little bit to continue, but I'm just not sure. Or any alternative suggestions. So now, believe it or not, I'm going to start talking about my reading here on Friday Reads. The first book that I finished this week, I think I was in the midst of it, or maybe, I don't know, maybe I was almost finished last week. But that was Young Mungo, which I have returned to the library, but I'll put a picture up. And Young Mungo was part of my reading for the BookTube prize, so I cannot review it right now, and I will do a review video on August 1st of the 6 books I'm currently reading. But I did read it, and it definitely, if you want to read it for a theme month, you could slot it right into Pride Month or Misery May. That's all I'm going to say about Young Mungo right now. But stay tuned for my full review in August. So I did my rereading of The Glass Hotel by Emily St. John Mandel. If you have been watching lately, you know that I'm doing a little personal reread project to read Station 11, The Glass Hotel, and Sea of Tranquility closer together so that I can enjoy some of the interconnected themes, characters, and other little touches that occur in these books, and also because I just really wanted to read them again. I really love these books by Emily St. John Mandel. So not too long ago, I reread and rhapsodized about Station 11, and now I'm here to rhapsodize about The Glass Hotel. Very different in plot than Station 11, which was post-pandemic. People, something has come through and wiped out like 99% of the population, and the survivors mainly focusing on a group of people in a traveling Shakespearean company. They have they're called the Symphony. They have a symphony, and they have players, and they're navigating in this post, the world has begun over, basically, with just the straggling remainders of people. In the Glass Hotel, it's not a science fiction or an apocalyptic novel in any way. There's a slight little dash of ghosts, though, and they are very significant. But for the most part, it is realistic fiction, and her plots are so hard to describe, because if you tell what this book is about, it sounds really boring, because it's about this man, this very wealthy man, who has made his wealth through a Ponzi scheme, and all the people that have invested in him along the way, or invested their money with him. And it's about a young woman named Vincent that he meets after the death of his wife. He meets her at a hotel in an isolated little island in Canada. And she is several decades younger. I think she's even younger than his grown daughter. But when he meets her, she leaves the hotel and she goes to New York to live with him. And it's also about her brother, her estranged brother, and it's about the people who've invested their money and what happens when the scheme collapses. And so that is what it is on the surface, but it's really about so much more about these people. I feel like I'm inadequately equipped to describe why this book is so good. At one point in the story, Vincent meets Claire, his daughter, and Claire is very skeptical about this relationship with this much younger woman, and she makes a comment about Vincent's name being unusual for a girl, and Vincent picks up on this insult, but her response is she tells her about how she was named after the poet Edna St. Vincent Millay, and Vincent spent hours reading and thinking about the poem Renascence. This poem Renascence, it's a fairly long poem, and I'm going to include it in the notes. And the Poetry Foundation has it, and also has a guide that I found very useful to read along with the poem. And Vincent talks about how she read this poem over and over again when she was a teenager. It was sort of like something to try to connect with her mother. Her mother disappears when she's 13, and she never knows whether it was an accident, a crime, a suicide. The mother goes out in a boat and never returns. And that this haunts Vincent all her life and is really an important part of her story. But anyway, back to this poem. Boy, I'm making a mess out of this. But the poem, when I read it, I thought, okay, Emily St. John Mandel does not waste words. If she's mentioning this poem, the poem is important. So I went and read the poem, and I thought, well, I know who else read this poem over and over and over again, because there are definitely moods and themes and ideas in that poem that I see permeating these three novels. And there's just things in this book about the workings of wealth, which is interesting in light of what I'm reading right now. Money, wealth, power. Also, in terms of themes that Mandel returns to, the idea of alternate realities. And in this particular book, it's not in a science fiction realm, but in a mental realm, where more than one character reflects on, well, what if at this particular point I had done this other thing instead of this thing I did, and they imagine the other pathway that their life did not take. There's a couple of characters from Station 11 who reappear, and there's a brief mention of the fact that there was a Georgian flu, but it was immediately contained and did not become a worldwide pandemic. So there's an alternate reality right there. There was a moment in this book, a moment of connection between this book and Sea of Tranquility that made me gasp when I saw it. Because when I read this the first time, the Sea of Tranquility didn't exist. But now, having read that, something happened in this book. It comes and goes very quickly, but when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe. I mean, did she plan this all out, or did later on she decide to circle back? But there's just, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but there's something in this that just comes and goes very quickly that just kind of stopped me in my tracks. So if all of that has not tantalized you, I don't know what will, except maybe a more eloquent person that didn't babble on for 5 minutes and not connect any of the dots. But I really, oops, there's my cheat sheet. I really loved Station 11. I loved reading it again. Don't think it's my last time. So after I finished Station 11, I picked up one of the Pride Month titles that I had rustled up at the library, and I read Lavender House by Lev A.C. Rosen. This takes place in 1952. It has a noir feel, and it is about a San Francisco cop named Andy who gets fired because he's caught in a very compromising position during a raid on a gay club. He has managed to keep his personal life and his professional life very separated. He's very closeted up until the point of the story's beginning, and he would pay attention to tips about places that might be raided and just not go to those places on those nights. But his system failed, he got caught, and now he's been thrown out of his job, he's been thrown out of his apartment, and when the story opens, he's day drinking in a bar and having some suicidal thoughts. So along comes a stylish lady who tells him that she knows who he is, she knows what happened, and she has a job offer for him. Her name is Pearl, and Pearl's wife Irene has recently died, and Pearl is not satisfied that it was an accident. Andy's very surprised to hear about a woman having a wife in 1952, but Pearl goes on to explain to him that they live in a house called Lavender House, and they are all part of a family that run the La Montagne soap business. It's these very fancy soaps that are infused with real flowers and special editions, and it's fancy soap. So Irene was one of the two matriarchs of this family, and it's a group of people that have made a found family, and they have a version of themselves that appear to the public, but within this home and this estate, they are free to be who they like. So all the staff and all of the family are queer, except for this one mother of one person who is older, and they have brought her to live there as well. And so this is a very unconventional setup, but Andy has fallen on a bad situation, so he decides to take this job and do some private investigation work to see if Irene's death was suspicious in any way. And of course it was. And it is basically a Agatha Christie type locked room mystery. He determines pretty soon that probably it's somebody within this family and staff, and so he's solving the mystery, but also there's more. So if it was just the mystery, it might just be kind of fluffy, sort of like, oh, it's Agatha Christie, but everybody's queer. But there's extra layers. There's a lot of exploration of the society at the time, repressive feeling of the 1950s, the dangerous nature of being yourself if yourself is not acceptable to society. Andy has to grapple with, and this part's very timely, he has to grapple with the negative perceptions of the police. He has structured this very careful life where he has really no family or friends. He goes to work, he's friendly with people at work, but he does not socialize with them, and he doesn't embark on any real relationships in his personal life. He just meets people in bars, has brief encounters. He keeps it all very separate, and he has very limited contact with his own family, who don't know that he is gay. So in his encounters with the people in this family and his conversations with them, he realizes that he realizes how problematic his life really is, and that there are other options. They're limited and kind of offbeat, but there are options. And so he's kind of goes on a personal journey to decide to remain engaged with this world and what the value of having friends and family really is. So there's a found family story for Andy in here and a murder mystery. So I had a good time reading this book. Rosen did throw in some red herrings to kind of keep me from figuring it all out too soon. So I had a fun time with the mystery, and I enjoyed the additional layers that gave it a little depth. And Rosen does mention in his acknowledgments another book that would make a great reading pairing, which is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Malinda, which is also set in San Francisco in the 1950s, about a young girl growing up in Chinatown named Lily, who discovers that she herself is queer. She falls in love, and she discovers this very exciting and tantalizing lesbian club in town. And so you can imagine that while the events of Lavender House are occurring in another part of town, Lily is experiencing all the things that happened in Last Night at the Telegraph Club. So the two of them together would make a fun reading activity. Oh, and I learned a sex term that I had never heard of before too. Why do I sound so excited about? I don't know. I was reading the book, and there's a part in there, and I thought, this didn't happen in the story. Like, don't get all excited and run and look for this. This scene was not in the story. It was a conversation, people. Two people are talking, and one of them asked the other, well, have you ever been the Lucky Pierre? And I was like, what's the Lucky Pierre? So I had to go and look that up. And then I was like, okay, I get it. So I learned something new while I was reading the book. So what am I reading right now? I am reading Trust by Hernan Diaz. This is another book that I'm reading for the BookTube prize judging. So guess what? I can't tell you my thoughts about it. I will tell you it is a book. It did win the Pulitzer Prize along with Demon Copperhead. And it is also about money and power. In a very different way. So it's funny that theme came up twice this week for me. But so Trust is structured in 4 sections that look at the same couple from different angles, and it is about the story of a man and his wife and the rise to the rise to fortune. His how he catapulted from being a wealthy and influential family in New York to being just insanely wealthy, and how he managed to profit from the crash of Wall Street in 1929 when everybody else failed, and also about his wife and her subsequent illness. And I don't know. I've only gotten into the second section. So the first section is a novel within a novel. It's a novel from 1937 that fictionalizes this couple. And then the second part is an unfinished autobiography by the man that the book was about. And then I think the third part is a memoir from his assistant, and the last part is notes from his wife. So like I said, I'm only in the second part, and I can't give review style comments about it at this time, but I was a little late to the game to read this book, and now I'm reading it. So I think that is finally it. A lot of talk, maybe not a lot of substance. I don't know. You tell me. So what have you been reading this week? Did you read any of these books that I've been working on, or what else did you read instead? Always appreciate your comments, your suggestions and recommendations. I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. Happy Father's Day if you are celebrating that, and I will see you soon. I think I'm going to do the mid-year freakout on Tuesday. I'm trying to decide or see if I can encapsulate. There's a lot of questions on that prompt, so I'm gonna take a look at it. Anyway, have a great weekend. Talk to you later. Bye.